Galveston, Texas is a coastal city rich in history, marked by its strategic geographical location, cultural diversity, and resilience in the face of oppression and natural disasters. Located on Galveston Island in the Gulf of Mexico, it has long been a significant port and economic hub in the region.
Born and raised here in Galveston at Reedy and sang in the choir. I've been here my whole life. The whole Galveston experience is just such a wonderful thing. I come from a family of doctors.
I am a BOI, born on the island. We're proud to say that. And growing up in Galveston, I really didn't know a lot about the island. My parents married and came to Galveston because there were good jobs. And their main focus was to keep a roof over our head and food on the table. So history of Galveston was not something that I knew a lot about.
Now, I'm the pastor here at Douglas Memorial Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. I've been the pastor here now for 3 years. I've been pastoring in the CME Church for 30 years now. And so my role is obviously the spiritual leader and the CEO of the business and of the running of the church here in Beaumont, Texas. My undergraduate is history. I have a degree in history, and I've taught history in public school system, middle school and high school for 15 years. While I was also growing my ministry. I'm currently now working on my Master of Divinity at Garrett Theological Seminary.
Emancipation Park, located in Houston, Texas, in the 3rd Ward, was founded in 1872 by formerly enslaved African Americans, led by Reverend Jack Yates, Richard Brock, Reverend Elias Dibble, and Richard Allen. The park was purchased for $800 and was initially the only public park and swimming pool in Houston open to African Americans. The park was established to commemorate Juneteenth, the day when enslaved people in Texas were informed of their freedom on June 19, 1865, 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation.
I was aware of Juneteenth and that it was relevant to freeing the enslaved, but only because as young children, I have an older sister who's passed and a brother that's younger that passed. We would go back to her hometown in Mejia, Texas, and celebrate Juneteenth. But as a child, it was all the fun and the food and everything.
Galveston played a crucial role in the export of cotton, the most important cash crop in Texas and the broader southern United States. Cotton was primarily grown on plantations throughout Texas and other parts of the South, initially worked by enslaved African Americans before the Civil War and by freedmen and tenant farmers afterward.
Plantations in Texas, including those around Galveston, were sites of forced labor where enslaved African Americans worked under brutal conditions. The economic and social structures of these plantations were built on the exploitation of enslaved people, making them central to understanding the context of slavery in Texas. Plantations in Texas were among the last places in the United States to hear of the Emancipation Proclamation, which had been issued 2.5 years earlier on January 1, 1863. The delay was due to the minimal Union presence in Texas, allowing the institution of slavery to persist longer than in other Confederate states.
That most Texans know about, we call Juneteenth. On June 19th, 1865 is when the enslaved Africans in Texas actually found out that they had been freed on January 1st, 1863, when President Abraham Lincoln read the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, basically freeing all of the slaves in the South. Well, that information did not get to the enslaved in Texas until for another 2 years. Partly or largely because of the lack of communication and the swiftness of communication during the time period, and also the slave owners who were aware of it were just not motivated or quick to let their slaves know that they've been freed. They still wanted to get some labor out of them. But it took 2 years for that proclamation to be read to the enslaved in Texas. And so they were continued to work on the plantation, continued to live, be treated as slaves for those 2 years. And you mentioned even beyond that, there are reports and that there were some that even remained enslaved for up to 6 or 7 years after that. Again, dissemination of information, difficult, not as swift as we understand it to be now. But then also you have the people, the white slave owners and white business owners who are in power, just not really motivated to let these individuals know that they're free. And then the question we ask, well, aren't those people, who's there to enforce this? Well, the Union Army just didn't have a presence in Texas as it did in much of the South. The South, the Union Army had basically invaded the South in Georgia and Mississippi, and even Alabama, and basically taking control, and the Union soldiers were there to enforce the federal mandates. Well, not so much in Texas. And so with the lack of presence of Union soldiers, there's no one to enforce this proclamation, even once it was read and was given.
During the American Civil War, Galveston was a vital Confederate port. The city witnessed several significant battles, including the Battle of Galveston in 1863, where Confederate forces recaptured the island from Union troops. Despite the widespread economic disruption caused by the war, Galveston retained its importance as a cotton shipping center. The demand for cotton remained high, and Galveston played a key role in facilitating the resurgence of the Southern economy, entering a period of recovery and further economic growth driven by its port activities and burgeoning cotton industry.
Galveston is a big cotton city, and so the slaves that were bought and sold here fueled the labor for cotton, and cotton made Galveston the biggest city, one of the biggest cities in the United States at that time, at the turn of the century.
While the announcement of emancipation brought immediate changes to the lives of many enslaved people, others continued working on plantations under exploitative conditions even after General Order No. 3. Many freedmen were coerced into labor contracts that closely resembled slavery, with unfair wages and harsh treatment, highlighting the ongoing struggle for true freedom and equality.
Galveston is a very unique city, and there have been so many things. You probably have read about all of Galveston's the first churches, Methodist, Baptist, Episcopalian, so on. And these things were done prior to 1865. So Galveston, in a way, was somewhat progressive in doing so. For whatever reason they did it. We had the First Baptist Church in 1840. First Methodist Church, 1848. Now, the other two were in the latter part of the 80s.
Reedy Chapel AME Church is one of the oldest African American churches in Texas, founded in 1848. It played a crucial role in the lives of African Americans during the Reconstruction era and beyond. The church is closely linked to Juneteenth, the day on June 19, 1865, when Union General Gordon Granger announced the emancipation of enslaved people in Texas.
You have, along with Jim Crow, even really their seeds prior to the end of Reconstruction and the tail end of Reconstruction. You have the rise of the Ku Klux Klan in order, again, to support this idea of white supremacy. And then once the troops are gone, they just almost take over as far as being the law of the land, so to speak. Because in many cases, the actual law, the sheriff, the police officer, are members of the Ku Klux Klan. And so, this idea of Jim Crow really takes root once Reconstruction ends and the South begins to really separate and segregate and oppress the freedmen again, almost as bad, if not worse, than slavery. Many would say, how can it be worse than slavery? Well, I don't know. I've never been one, but the amount of brutality and lynchings and death, in many cases, were more prevalent than during the last 100 years of slavery. Because think about it, an owner. I'm trying not to kill my slaves. I need them to work. They were definitely brutal and inhumane, but the goal wasn't to go out and kill them just for no reason. The Klan didn't think that way. They would just pull people from their homes and just string them up. So in many cases, the existence of these freed slaves became even more dangerous without the protection of federal troops and Reconstruction.
Juneteenth to me reminds me of how far we've come and how much more work we need to do to reach absolute equality. Those two words you can find those two words in the General Orders number 3. And we haven't accomplished that. And sometimes I really feel that things are going backwards. So, things seem to be in some form repeating itself. So, and Juneteenth is American history. It's a dark side of history, but it is American history. And I would have to say, in many cases, if you think of some of the buildings, especially in the South States, if they were built in 1820, 1821, who built those buildings? Who maintained those things? Who took care of the family? It's just, it's really appalling to me that there's some that would like to erase it. It's a matter of some saying, oh, we don't want to be on a guilt trip, but it happened. And in other countries, they acknowledge their wrongs, and they have done everything they can to present their story and say that never again. So, but United States doesn't seem to be able to do that.
You have the Compromise of 1877, and then in 1896, you have the Plessy v. Ferguson decision from the Supreme Court, which upheld the separate but equal. Basically, Supreme Court said in 1896 that it's okay for segregation is okay. It's great as long as everything's equal. Of course, we know it never was equal. But that case basically supported and upheld the oppression and the segregation and the dehumanizing that was happening in the South. The Supreme Court basically in Plessy upheld that and gave fuel to the fire to continue to do this. And so, when Reconstruction is really in it, and I think you said Commerce 1877, I want to say by 1880, all federal troops were gone, if not earlier than that. So you really have from, let's say, 1880 until 1954 was, really the first major dent in the systematic oppression and dehumanizing and separation of the African American in the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education case, which basically overturned Plessy. So that is 70 years, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So that's 54. That's about 70 years of Jim Crow, of oppression, of unfair treatment, of inequality at the voting booths. Again, there's a constitutional amendment that we can vote, but then states are giving they're having these different voting rules and suppressing the vote with all these different. You got to be able to read. You got to have this. You got to have that. And doing everything they can. And if that didn't work, of course, by that time, remember those schools that I talked about that they get founded very quickly after the Civil War. That turned into some of our HBCUs now. They become that. Many of them get founded very quickly during that Reconstruction period and then shortly thereafter. And so the populace becomes more educated. And so, not being able to read, that doesn't work to vote. I can read now, so you gotta let me vote. So they do other things, whether it's owning property, all these different kind of things. And then when those don't work, then just the outright violence. You show me the polls, we're gonna beat the hell out of you. But there's 70 years of that before the court actually steps in and begins, to lay down legislation, and before we see a systematic and collective effort among the people to do something.
Well, I'll say this. Galveston is not quite like it was when I was growing up. Even though everything was segregated, in fact, I lived in a block. I know all the people across the street were white. I think there were only 4 families on that was on the south side of the street. While we didn't socialize, but if anybody was ill or new baby or so on, there was always somebody in the neighborhood would bring something, food, clothing, and things like that. But it was still segregated. You still had the white and black signs. You had places that you just couldn't go. We had, even though Galveston is an island, as you know, it's surrounded by water, we only had like this one block in which African Americans could actually go and enjoy the beach.
Part of the problem during that 70 years between the end of Reconstruction and really the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement is that African Americans had little or absolutely no voice in what was happening to them. No voice in laws that were being made. No voice in how cities were being run. No voice in how the school board was being run. No voice at all, locally, state, or federal. It just had to continue to take whatever, the powers that be, who were white, wanted to do. My grandmother on my mother's side was born in 1920. So it kind of gives you a sense of what her life might have been in speaking to her. And I do remember her talking a lot about, growing up in the 20s and the 30s, and maybe even some in the 40s, I don't remember. But, she worked in the house of a white family. As best I could, tell from her talking about, as asking, not so much a nanny, but definitely we should, go there every day and take care of the house and the kids, if there, were any. But and that experience of not being seen, not and I got a sense just from the few times I was a young kid when she was talking about it that. It was something she endured in order to take care of her family. It was, she would say having to go, work in the white woman, wash their dishes, eat their food, and I come home and I ain't got anything. That's kind of she was complaining about it. So kind of get that experience of even in the 20s and 30s. Again, this is in Texas, of and having a large amount of respect for my grandmother for having being willing to do that, and got to raise somebody else's kids and still raise yours and do that. Even on my father, he has talked about, he remembers having to, if you're walking down the street and a white person's coming, you got to get off the curb and just let them pass. He tells me stories of having to go to the back of a little burger joint to get your hamburger. You got to go by the back door and wait for them to bring you your food, and give you your bag and throw it to you. So, he tells me a lot. He talks about segregation a lot. And again, he was born in 45. Growing up in the 50s in Louisiana, which was a hotbed of racism. Yeah. And so, but again, he tells stories of segregation and oppression and having to move, and I think just what you even see sometimes in films, having to yes sir everybody, and even as he got older, I think in high school, a little older, one time he mentioned about, having younger white children call him boy, and having to endure that, because, responding isn't worth your life, and recognizing that. My own thing, just telling on this is where, I realized, how close, even my own birth and existence is to the struggle. Like I said, Benjamin born in 69, the tail end of that. But I remember even in high school, I graduated high school in 1988. I don't know, should I say cities and names on here? I don't know what you're gonna do this. From Abilene, Texas. I remember in Anson, Texas, which is outside of Abilene, Anson, Texas. And they used to tell us, when we was young, they don't be caught in Anson after dark. You need to, you gonna hang around, do what you do, but don't do that. We young do that. But we was told that, there was a sign in the town square at Anson that we say, that was there, in the 50s and 60s and all that time. Well, again, in high school, so this is before I graduated, so it might have been 87 or 88. And we went to Anson and we actually saw the sign. And there was a sign in the town square and it said, "Nigga, if you could read, run. If you can't read, run anyway." And we couldn't believe this. This is in the 80s, 87. What do you mean?
Well, by the time I was middle school principal, all the schools were integrated, and things I would say went well for me. I managed to start out really teaching at Central High School, which happened to be the first African American high school for the state of Texas for African Americans. And when they finally built a middle school for African Americans, I was transferred there. And at the time, Galveston Independent School District was still, they say, the government wasn't pleased with their integration plans, let's just say that. So they had been under watch for a number of years. So they decided first they decided they would gradually do it by starting out in like the kindergarten classes. But the education department wasn't satisfied with that. So finally about 1968, and I guess it was 1967, they wanted total integration. So our high school was merged with the white high school. And the school where I taught middle school became the building, because there were so many students, there were close to 5,000 students together. So that middle school became Ball High North, because Ball High was the white school. And I just didn't, I could have gone back to Central, which Central was a middle school. They decided that would be a middle school. I just didn't want to pack up again, so I stayed there. And I went from, I guess, from teacher to the first Black person that had a department at Ball High, became assistant principal, and as well as being transferred to the administration building I consider my job a gopher, because I was the associate. I was just assistant superintendent, because we had a new superintendent and he would put quite a bit on him. So he selected me to be his assistant, and I had some really neat experiences traveling with him, because sometimes I had to sit in on a conference while he was speaking to a teacher who, let's say, made a few errors, and sometimes it was very uncomfortable to do so, but and that's kind of the way it went on. And then I became principal of middle school. So I was teaching at the time before they integrated completely in Galveston.
Wow.
Yeah, because see, I was raised during the Jim Crow era, born and raised during the Jim Crow era. And I attended all, segregated schools. And in 1968, I was actually at Sam Houston Junior High when the district decided how they would do this. And so they merged the two high schools. So I was there during the time of the merger. Yeah.
Wow.
And I would have to say, in Galveston, it went well compared to other southern cities. We did have a sit-in, but it didn't last that long. I wasn't part of that. I graduated in 1960, so from Central High, and I was teaching. I was in college when a young man named Kelton Sams And everybody knew what they were doing. They left school. The principal knew. Everybody knew what they were going to do. And it only lasted a few days because we had three, I know at least three very prominent, well-respected African Americans in Galveston. Thomas D. Thomas D. Armstrong, um, Gus Allen, as well as L.A. Morgan, who was actually at the administration building at the time. So things were kind of hush hush, but it smoothed over, and everything kind of went well. And of course, I think I would say, I'm going to say this, and I really mean it. I think that Ball High really welcomed the Central High students for a number of reasons, because um, Prairie View A&M University, used to be Prairie View State, was actually the Interscholastic League for African Americans. And they won so many awards, in let me say, in the literary area, arts, sports, so on. So they were receiving students who could boost their school also. So it went really well. We didn't have the problems that other cities had. Well, our mission from the beginning was to, and I'm assuming that some of the people that Maggie Williams was the chair, original chair, brought in were just like me. They didn't know a lot about the history. And of course, Marsh Davis, he, in fact, Indiana was one of the places where enslaved people escaped and were protected. Uh, so for them also is that they wanted to know more too. So just our mission was to research Galveston Black history and share it. That was the goal. And I think the first project was actually a Black cemetery that was founded in 1911 by African Americans, but had been neglected for years, since 1944. And they wanted, let's try to save this, what's left of this cemetery. So that was our first project. And of course, we did a African American guide that pointed out the places and people who were instrumental in being activists and helping Galveston develop for the African American community. Mm. So that's our goal, and it still is. We have actually published 3 books now, and all the money, all the proceeds support Rosewood Cemetery, the Black cemetery. Galveston Historical Foundation owns it. The developer that finally ended up owning all the land donated the cemetery to GHF. So our 3 books, African Americans of Galveston, was first in 2013. We have Lost Restaurants of the Galveston African American community. And now we have a companion book for our exhibit that we have at Ashton Villa. And it gives more information that the exhibit's able to share.
Emancipation Park has been a central location for annual Juneteenth celebrations, reflecting its deep roots in African American history and culture. It has hosted countless events, including picnics, concerts, educational programs, and community gatherings, fostering a sense of community and pride. The park faced neglect and underfunding for many years, mirroring broader societal issues of racial inequality. Despite these challenges, the community has remained committed to preserving and revitalizing the park, symbolizing resilience and the ongoing struggle for equity. In recent years, significant revitalization efforts have been undertaken to restore and enhance Emancipation Park. A $33 million renovation completed in 2017 included modern amenities, a new community center, playgrounds, and upgraded facilities, ensuring the park remains a vibrant and welcoming space. The park stands as a powerful symbol of freedom and progress, representing both the historical struggles and achievements of African Americans. It embodies the spirit of emancipation and serves as a reminder of the importance of community, heritage, and the enduring fight for civil rights.
I think we have to admit that yes, as a people, we're further better off than we were 50 years ago. Yes, we are. Of course we are. But we're not near as far as we think we are. And what I mean by that is I don't think to rephrase that. I think there have been times where we have, as we're saying, I'm talking about African Americans, we have been fooled into thinking that we have reached a place that we haven't reached, that we've reached a place of equality that we're not. We've reached a place of respect from the other side that we haven't yet. We've been fooled into thinking that because, perhaps we have made a stride in one area, or our concession has been given, or an injustice has been dealt with. And so therefore we think we've arrived. And really, no, it's just one leg on the journey. We haven't arrived. And sometimes we get lulled to sleep. I'm a firm believer that the major gains that happened from the Civil Rights Act of 1964, I think it was one in 65, maybe in 66, huge, absolutely huge in the development and in the rights and the freedoms of blacks. But then we got complacent. I think we got so excited about what we had achieved that took so long to get. And we achieved these civil rights acts, we achieved these things, and then we've done it. And just kind of enjoyed those things. And then over the next 20, 30 years, they just slowly got chipped away at. And we didn't continue to, because those acts didn't necessarily even the playing field. Part of it is not that we don't have the capacity or the mindset to do that, is that our conditions don't allow us to do that in many cases. And so that's why, first of all, we have to learn how to generate money. When you create generational wealth, you give opportunities and access, and in many cases power, to not just the now, but to the future.
The transformation of these sites from places of enslavement to symbols of liberation is central to the narrative of Juneteenth.
So Juneteenth to me means just, it's a word that I treasure. I treasure Galveston having so much history. But it's something that, we should celebrate year round. And we just need to keep working.
Yes, immerse yourself in all things Juneteenth. A couple of years ago, Juneteenth became a national holiday. That was really big. And so there's just so many activities that are going on, everything from lectures to gospel concerts to you name it. And it's all coming up. I don't have the website, but if you Google Galveston Juneteenth, it'll give you all the activities that you want to check out.